What's up, pod pals? It is your buddy Adam, and you are tuning into Podcasting Business School. It's the show where I teach you how to love your podcast like a hobby, but build it like a business. If you are looking for some podcasting tips around podcast growth, podcast monetization, podcast audience engagement, or just how to be a good old entrepreneur, you're in the right place. And speaking of entrepreneurship, one of my favorite entrepreneurs and pod pals is joining us here today, Joe Sanok from the new soon-to-be released book, Thursday is the New Friday, and from the Practice of the Practice podcast. He is here with us. We're going to nerd out over one of my favorite topics that I don't really get to talk about a whole lot, but that's developing your ideal lifestyle, like letting your business serve you. You are not a servant to your business. I love the concept of his new book. I live a lot of these principles that we're going to talk about. So I cannot wait to bring my good friend Joe onto the show. Joe, how's it going, man?
Adam, I'm so excited to be here. Anytime I get to hang out with you, whether it's in person or just a phone call or this, I get so excited.
Well, like I said, you're one of my favorite people to dive into and be like, all right, Joe, what do you got, man? What are you working on? What are you excited about? So maybe okay, so I have to reference, you've been on the show before. So if you guys want Joe's whole life story, that whole thing, we dove into more of that last time. Episode, I don't know if you knew that, if you remember this, episode 69, Joe Sanok. of course, the former rock band guy gets episode 69.
I got to tell you real quick. I don't think I told you this, that when I was in the Boy Scouts, I wanted my friends to be able to go to New Mexico with me, but they didn't want to become Boy Scouts. So I started an Explorer Post and we named it Explorer Post 69 because we were seniors in high school and just thought that's going to be funny because then we had to wear t-shirts that said Explorer Post 69 the whole time.
That sounds like a band name, honestly. Like that. That when you go on the comeback tour, in your glory years, Explore Post 69, starring Joe Sanok. So long story short, if you guys want to go back and listen to that one, it's episode 69 here on this show. But I want to start off this show. What are you nerding out on in the podcasting world right now? What really has your attention? We're going to dive into everything that the book's about, but I can't let you slip through my grasp to not know what you're really hot on in the podcasting space right now.
Yeah, I was just at Podcast Movement a couple of weeks ago, and there was one thing that just kind of shocked me, and it was this guy from Libsyn. His name's Rob, and he was talking about privacy, and he was showing how we think that someone just downloads our episode and then it just talks to Apple, but that how if you don't have certain privacy settings set up, it can go to these third parties. And he gave this whole example of, say someone's applying to get a visa in a different country, they run a background check, they go to these third parties and they find out this person's listened to a bunch of LGBTQ podcasts, and then their visa gets rejected because the privacy setting of that podcaster wasn't right. Wow. I just want to dive into that because I feel like privacy and people being able to listen to whatever podcasts they want without worrying about it messing up their life, that's got me super interested. And then honestly, just the amount of people I met at Podcast Movement and just hanging out with them and developing these relationships. You and I both view networking the same way. It's creating friends, it's creating depth, and just following up with these really interesting people that I met at Podcast Movement. I'm just geeked out about that at this phase right now.
Yeah, I'm super jealous that you were there live in real life person. But you're absolutely right. We're both that's how we met. We both spoke at an event and we kind of just hey, let's be friends. And we went out to dinner. And I impressed you with my dessert eating skills, right?
You did. For a previously a heavy dude, you knocked out that dessert, that fudge brownie that came in a little cast iron skillet. I was I'm not going to have any dessert. And you're I'll just get one and we'll see.
And our buddy Tom Singer was you're going to share? I'm nope, I'm putting this, you get your own damn dessert, man. Yeah, that was a fun time. And I love just meeting people like you that are just you're in the space to learn and to give and to just help other people level up. And that's all you've ever done in our interactions. And so when you hit me up and you're bro, my background, how I live my life, I'm writing this new book, I was freaking psyched, man, because I love lifestyle entrepreneurship. I love creating a business that really allows us to live the life that we want. I talked about in an early episode of where a lot of people start off, having a 9 to 5 and they like, oh, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. But then they develop, their entrepreneurship develops a what I call a 5 to 9. So a 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. Like, it's like, what the hell happened? Like, now I'm working way more hours. I'm making less money. I'm super stressed. Damn it. I've totally screwed this up. So I want to dive in to kind of the broad brush concept of your new book, why you decided to write it and who it's going to serve.
Yeah, for me, it's interesting. It started with just wanting to share what I had learned about working less, making more, a lot of what you hear. And then as I really worked with a writing coach, I saw how the 4-day work week or fewer has really been how I've lived a lot of my life. So then I started to dig into, if we're going really broad brush stroke, let's go back 4,000 years to the Babylonians. So
the Wayback Machine.
Yeah. So one of the central questions as I started writing was like, how did we even get a 7-day week? And so I started digging into the history. Literally, the Babylonians just made it up because they could see the sun, the moon, the earth, Mercury, Venus, Mars, and Jupiter. Like, they were bad at astronomy. And so they said, let's have a 7-day week. The Romans had a 10-day week. The Egyptians had an 8-day week. It wasn't even until the year 300 when one of the Roman emperors said, I've converted to Christianity, 7-day week, that it even really took off. So if we just start with the premise that the 7-day week, totally arbitrary, we could have had a 5-day week and had 73 of them in a year. So then fast forward to the 1800s, and people were working 10 to 14 hours a day, 6 or 7 days a week, like farmer schedules. Life was tough, factory life, just like that's all you did is you worked. And then in 1926, Henry Ford switches to the 40-hour work week, specifically to sell more cars to his own employees, because he thought if people don't have a place to go other than work, they're not going to buy a car. But if they have a place to go on the weekend, shoot, like we can sell a bunch of cars to our own employees. So it was for that selfish reason or business reason, however you frame it, less than 100 years ago that we get this 40-hour work week that to us feels like this unchangeable institution. So even just starting with our view of time, our view of the 7-day week, our view of the 40 hours that feels so certain to us, we made this up. Humans made this up. There's no rhyme or reason to it other than a few powerful people said this is how it should be. And then we have to ask ourselves, is this how we want it to be moving forward?
You just blew my mind with some Babylonian knowledge there, Joe. Like, that's a valid question, though. I've never really thought, like, how in the world did we come up with 7 days? Like, I know, like, basics, like Thursday used to be called Thor's Day, and there's like some Greek action happening there, but that's about it. That's about all I got. And that's from watching like Harry Potter or something. I don't know. So
that's your source of all authoritative information.
We have kids. We have kids that are around 10 years old. That's where you get all your info. Harry Potter. There's 8 of them.
So when your kids get hurt, you go try to find unicorn blood to salve it up.
Yeah. What would Hermione do? What would Hermione do right now?
Find a unicorn and bloodlet it.
Milk it. You had to milk that unicorn. So I'm a big fan of the whole Thursday is the new Friday concept. Like, that's more often than not, Thursday is the last day that I work. And then I don't work Friday, Saturday, Sunday, which is awesome. And I can tell our listeners and your hopefully eventual readers that the pressure that pops up into your mind, like, oh, but I don't have enough time to get all the things done. But the life experiment and the real results that I've had are I'm way more efficient. It forces me to be very, very efficient. And I only do the important things. And I'm okay with not being 10 steps ahead. That was my problem, Joe. I love being ahead. So if I'm like, well, I've got extra time, I can, record 3 more episodes and then I'm 3 more weeks ahead. But who gives a damn if I'm 8 weeks ahead, if I'm not seeing my kids or if I'm not enjoying my life or I'm putting my health on the back burner? So can you speak to the concept of Thursday is the new Friday a little bit? And like, let's get into some of the structure of how you're encouraging people to reshape their entrepreneurial lives.
Yeah. I mean, I think deep down, we know this is true. Like, are our best ideas when we're like maxed out and stressed out, or are our best ideas when we slow down and maybe you're in the shower or you're on a long drive without the radio on, or you're on a hike? Those are the times when your brain opens up and says, whoa, look at all this. So you record 8 episodes ahead and you're 2 months ahead. Great. But then are you just adding more and more work to yourself and filling in when those 8 episodes are, or you can actually slow down? So, I mean, I remember I was in Nepal It was like 2001 or so with a friend of mine. And we're at the edge of this jungle. And our guide says to us, if we get chased by a wild rhinoceros, climb a tree. And I didn't ask any follow-up questions like what kind of tree, how often does this happen? Can we practice a little bit climbing trees? Because, no follow-up questions. So we go into the jungle and we're probably an hour in and we see a rhinoceros. And I've got my camera, before it was digital, you took a picture and then it's like, zzz, zzz, zzz.
Yeah.
And so I take a picture. I don't know how it turned out. I'm like, I'm going to get to, Rite Aid and look at this picture and be like, what's that blob in the jungle? So I take a step forward to take a closer picture of the rhino. At this point, I should have been smart enough to step backward, but I did not. I took another step forward to take another photo and the rhino charged our group. So I blatantly disregard what the guide had said and I take off running because I knew in high school I had been a sprinter and my friend Todd had been long distance. So at least for the first 100 yards, like I got this. So I'm like running through the jungle, pulling all these leaves out of my way. And finally, I don't hear the rhino behind us. And I turn around and come back with my friend Todd and some other people that were with us. We all had run. Our guide shimmies down a tree and yells at us for not running up a tree. But if you think about the brain, when does the brain try new things? Not when you're being chased by a rhino, because if I didn't climb a tree well, I would have died. I knew I could outrun Todd and for sure the other two people that were like much slower than
You just
me.
had to be faster than Todd.
Yeah. It's like you do it, you know how to do, even if it's a bad decision. So sure, when getting chased by a rhino, number one decision, climb a tree. You're super safe if you know how to do that. But is that when I'm being chased by a rhino, when I try something new? No, not at all. And so our brains are this way in the work world too. When we're stressed out and maxed out, we're being chased by a rhinoceros. And so we go back to our defaults. We go back to overworking. We go back to just email, the checklists that feel easy. Like, ooh, I checked 10 things off my list today. Well, were those even the most important things? It's like, being on some big podcast for half an hour could have probably moved your career forward than all 20 of the things you just did, but you didn't stop enough to even think about what actually moves that needle forward. So Thursday is the new Friday really starts with, listen, we have to slow down if we're going to do our very best work. And then we look into like the neuroscience and all the research and case studies around how that actually practically plays itself out.
So the assumption that I'm making is, all right, if Thursday is the new Friday, that means we ain't doing work on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. How do you define not working? I think that's something that's important. Like, what are the ground rules of not working? And it seems weird to have rules about that, but I know that question is going to pop up. What counts, Joe? Can I check my email? What if somebody wants to give me $1 million? Then what?
Yeah. So what's interesting about my book that's different from most self-help books, most self-help books say this is the prescriptive nature. Follow my 5-step program. Then you'll feel this way. You have this pain. By the end of these 5, you're going to feel this way. I view my book more as a menu. I trust that the reader is a smart person and that they can pay attention to their own body and their own life and then apply things because they're so smart and they're the expert on themselves to say, I'm going to try this menu. I'm going to do some experiments and then I'm going to get some data and see if that worked and then change it. So often when we read some of these books on productivity, it's you do the whole book, you try it, you're like, it doesn't work for me. And then you just say that whole book is bunk. I'm not going to do it. Whereas my book is a menu that's teaching you how to develop yourself over time, to even think of yourself as an organism or your business as an organism. So to answer your question, a couple tools or menu items would be first to understand soft boundaries and hard boundaries. Like what are the non-negotiables? So for example, I always take at least a 3-day weekend. So if I get a consulting client that says, I would love to work with you for some mind-blowing amount of money, but I need to work with you on Friday morning. Sorry, like that's just like a hard boundary that I live my life with 3-day weekends because I know the kind of work I do during the week then is just so much better. What are some soft boundaries? If my assistant has been going through my email and she says, your attorney just sent a very important email and it's Friday morning. And she says, you probably shouldn't wait till Monday. I'm probably going to jump on my email and I'm going to reply to that. So understanding that, yes, we want some hard and fast, but that's also over time going to change. So for example, for a long time, I was only working 4 or 5 days a month, while I was on this big road trip with my kids. But now I'm in the middle of a book launch and, I'm doing Monday through Thursday, tons of podcast interviews. Everything is through the lens of getting people to know that this great book is out there. And so there's going to be also patterns that have to change over time for you to be able to monitor how you're feeling on the inside and then also how you're contributing to the world.
Well, I think like just the fact that you're putting this message out there and getting people and challenging them to think differently, this is huge. This is going to change a lot of lives. Because I remember the first time that I found the concept of the free day. I was in a coaching program called Strategic Coach. That was like the big thing that they started making. It's like, you have to start booking at least one free day. Book one free day where you don't work, you don't have, you don't check your email, you don't try to do business, and just see what happens. And I fell in love with the concept so much that I've been tracking how many free days I take where I don't work. That's when I have like 5 different life metrics that I track, and that is one of them. How many days I don't work. And like last year, during 2020 pandemic-a-thon, I didn't work. I think I hit 140 days that I didn't work in 2020. And that was a new personal best. The first quarter of 2021, I had 40 free days. And like, I put that out there. I'm like, things are going well. Like this is a symptom that my life is the way that I want it to be. I'm spending time doing the things that I want to do with the people that I love doing them with. So
what the brain research actually supports is that the things you're doing outside of your business are probably going to help you make better connections in your business. So when I'm out paddleboarding on a Friday with my daughters, I'm not going to be thinking about business, but I might have a realization of something that really blows like people's minds that if I had been stressed out, I wouldn't have noticed. Just like the other day. So I'm in the midst of a divorce, and I was looking at these 2 basil plants that were in a pot together as I was meditating outside. And one basil plant was like dying and the other one was thriving. And I just had this realization, like if I put the dying one into its own pot and the thriving one into its own, I wouldn't get mad at the basil. I'd be like, that's what they needed, was to be separated from each other. And personally, that just really helped in the midst of a very difficult transition for me. And also that's something that's going to help the world. But if I was sprinting from one thing to the next and was stressed, I wouldn't have even looked at my basil plant. And so it's like, this is something that as I've talked to people, just that basil plant example, they've said, that is such a great analogy. And so we have these moments where we have realizations when we're slowing down that will help our business, but it's not like we're slowing down and like, okay, now I'm slowing down and can think about my business more. No, just like chill out and enjoy yourself and just trust that that's going to happen.
Yeah. And when I come off my 3-day weekend, Monday, I'm ready to work. Like you said, I'm hungry for it. I'm not going, Monday, but I have the most creative ideas. Monday morning, I get up, get a little workout in, get a little coffee in my system. And it's just like idea freaking factory. And it's amazing because like you said, so many times the stress factor isn't there. And I'm excited about it. I'm excited to sit in my chair in the cockpit here in my pod bunker and really be creative and allow those creative juices to flow. It's an amazing freaking feeling, man.
Yeah, it's like I see it all the time, and it's hard to just tell people, like, come on, just try it. I host this event called Slowdown School every summer for entrepreneurs, and people fly into Northern Michigan. It's a small airport with 2 gates, and we pick them up in a big yellow school bus. And so everyone feels like they're little kids.
That's awesome.
They get on the bus, and I ring a bell, and I say, all right, the time of travel is over. Like, I want you to be mindful of where you are. You made it, all the stress of late flights and all that. You're here. Take a breath and let's start. Then we do a meditation and then the bus leaves. And we drive out to the beaches of Northern Michigan. We have an executive chef. And for the first 2.5 days, we go hiking. I bring in massage therapists. I bring in a yoga teacher. We skip stones on the beach. We play spike ball. We just hang out. The only time they pull out their phones is to take pictures or video. And they can't even post it to social media until Wednesday. So then on Wednesday, that's when we just absolutely kill it. And this one guy, Michael Glavin, he has a counseling practice in Chicago, amazing couples therapist. He trains people in it. He supervises them. And he had been in this mastermind group with me and been talking about writing this book and trying to capture what he did and eventually launch courses and other things. And every time he had his hot seat, it was like, I'm still kind of stuck. I'm not sure what to do. And so months went by, and then he comes to Slowdown School, and I walk them through this kind of sprint structure. And they go into a 20-minute sprint. And in 20 minutes, Michael sketches out the first 9 chapters of his book with all the main points of everything and comes back. And then they all come in and they report out, what did we get done in 20 minutes? It's like this thing that for months had just been over his head because he slowed down. He didn't have the stress of life. Boom. He just like blew it up. And it's like, how much more efficient if we live that way? And it makes us feel better too.
Well, yeah. Okay. So I'm I'm interested in your first experience. Like, when did you first start applying this to yourself? Because at some point, like, you weren't doing this, right?
Yeah, you know what's really funny is how in life sometimes you start one place, you go away and think that there's a different path, and then you come back to it. I still remember at my freshman college orientation, the academic advisor said, "All right, we're going to make your schedules now. Pick your schedule." And I'm like, what do you mean pick my schedule? Like, I'm coming from high school where it's like, 8 to 3, and then you've got all your after school stuff. And she's like, "What days do you want to go to school?" I'm like, "Well, I don't want to go on Friday." Like, I know that. And so all through college, I never had a Friday class except for one semester. And that's because it was only offered Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And so I did that. And then after I graduated from grad school, my first therapy job, after I was offered it, I said, I want to do a 4-day work week as part of the negotiations. And I just thought people did that. I thought people did that. I didn't know people didn't do that. And so I had a 4-day-a-week job. But then, you start to get into your career, you get your other 40-hour-a-week job. They want you to work 5 days, and then you're on call. And I had a private practice, and I swayed away from that. But then in 2015, when I was leaving that full-time job to do the podcasting and writing full-time, I said, I want to do an experiment for this summer. I'm going to take 1 day off a week. I'm going to take Fridays off and just see what the numbers are by the end of the summer. And every single month was financially better than the month before. And so then that taking Fridays off became kind of the permanent thing I did. And then, the next summer I said, well, let's just try Mondays off and we'll just see. And just same sort of thing. But what it forced me to do was to say, what are the top items? And you said this earlier. What are the top items I need to do? So if I have 20 things I do in a typical week, and now I'm going to take off Fridays, statistically, I should only be able to get 16 of those items done. Maybe actually, because I'm more efficient, I'm getting 18. But the last bit that I don't get done, they're probably the worst things. So for example, maybe I was a business owner who was also cleaning the office and taking out the trash. But then I find out that when I can only do 16 items, that trash is just piling up. Nothing's getting dusted or vacuumed. The office starts to look like crap. Well, maybe as the business owner, you shouldn't be cleaning your office. Maybe you should just outsource that and not focus on that, because the high ticket items are the things you should put your energy into. And so it forces you to do your very best work because you're dropping the ball.
So many questions are popping up, Joe. This is
good.
I mean, it's such a unique, it's good for you because I know your book answers them all. So that's the really good news for everybody. Like, how does your week now, like, how do you structure it? Like, if you're in kind of like game on mode, like you are right now with promotion, Monday through Thursday, like, do you have themes for the day? Like, are there bookends? Like, are you certain days you do marketing, certain days you do interviews? Do you batch certain things? What does that look like?
Yeah. So during the book launch, it's a little different than my typical kind of business schedule. But things that are kind of hard boundaries. So my kids go to summer camp every day. They get dropped off at 8:45. I want to drop them off, and they get picked up at 4, and I want to pick them up. And so making sure that I'm present for these things that really matter to my kids and to me, I want to be fully present when I'm there, and I'm not doing anything after I pick them up. So I have a very clear time limited period of time I'm working on things. During that time though, especially for me being on podcasts, I'm trying to do over 200 podcast interviews about the book. And so right now, I mean, I think we have 100 plus scheduled after podcast movement. So we'll see how many come in, after things, but I've got a media company that's getting things in and just crazy. So it's really, okay, I've set this time period. Where can I squeeze things in? And then even my team members have to kind of fight for that time. I'm not going to make a bunch of exceptions and work till 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock at night. Now, if the Today Show calls me and says, we want you to be on here on Friday morning, I'm going to go to that. Like, there's times that you make exceptions for things. But the reality is most people will fit your schedule if you say, here's the times I'm available, and you make it reasonable and make it easy and automated. So outside of, though, the podcasting, when I'm doing a full on push like this, it's kind of a different schedule for me where I have the core items that, like, some consulting clients. I also have a membership community where we have an Ask the Expert each month. And then we also have a sort of like a Ask Joe What's Working. So those are set in my calendar. They just repeat. And then I have particular kind of big steps forward that I'm working on as well at particular times.
I love structuring my week. I'm a big momentum guy. And if I get going on with a little bit of mojo in one direction, I'm best to keep that direction going. So like Monday and Thursday are kind of my marketing launch the week, and then follow up, tie everything up type of week. But Tuesday, Wednesday, like we're talking on a Tuesday, I've been cooking for the last 3 hours doing interviews and just like talking to people. And once I get going, I just got to stop, about 3 hours is good. You're the tail end. And like, I got to replenish the food supply a little bit. I got to go get myself like a keto brick or something like that. Then I'm good to go for another few hours. But like, I've had it explained to me like front stage, backstage, like you're a performer. There are people that are out there on the front stage performing, but then there are people in the backstage taking care of the backstage stuff so that you can perform. And those are kind of the dual roles that we play and that our team is structured to play as entrepreneurs. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so. I think a couple of things you're touching on is vigilance decrement, which we can talk about a research study around that, and then finding your sprint type. So vigilance decrement, there was this study out of the University of Illinois, and they were looking at vigilance decrement. Vigilance, how well you pay attention to something. Decrement, meaning that it breaks down over time. So the idea used to be that your day and your energy was like a glass of water. So throughout the day, you're doing some podcasts, you're pouring it out, you're doing email. And at the end of the day, you just got to go get a keto brick. You got to go sleep, you got to go, exercise, you really can't optimize it more than what your energy level is. And so they wanted to challenge this. And so what they did is they had a very boring task. So they brought in students, and for about an hour or so, they would have them do this task where they were assigned a random 4-digit number. So say it was 2178. So every time 2178 comes up on the computer, you hit a button. There's going to be other 4-digit numbers that come up that aren't 2178, and you don't hit the button. Literally one of the most boring tasks you could do over a period of an hour. You're just watching 4-digit numbers and hitting the button. At the end of that time, they noticed there was vigilance decrement, meaning the way they paid attention at the end was worse than how they paid attention at the beginning. Then they had a second group that they brought in, as you do in research studies. And at the 1/3 mark, what they did is they interrupted the task and said, sorry, we put you on the wrong computer, or in some way said, we need to just give you a quick 1-minute break, go hang out in the lobby. There's no technology there, nothing to really distract them, just a 1-minute pure break. Then they brought them back in. And for the next third, did the same thing and interrupted at the 2/3 mark, another 1-minute break. So over that 1 hour period of time, they had 2 1-minute breaks, very short breaks. And they found that there was 0 vigilance decrement, meaning they paid attention as well at the end of the study as they did at the beginning with this really boring task. So why does that happen in the brain? Like, why is there no vigilance decrement? It's because our brain is very old. And so you think about if you walked through the jungle for 40 years and you were told there's a tiger here that wants to kill you, but for 40 years, you've never seen tiger scat, you've never heard a tiger, you've never seen a rustling. By the end of that 40 years, you're not going to be paying attention for the tiger. And so your vigilance is going to go down. Now, say you were on a new path, or say there was something that interrupted you, or there was something that made you think, oh, there might be a tiger here. Your vigilance decrement is going to go away. You're going to be very vigilant and you're going to pay attention. Our brain doesn't know the difference between walking through the jungle and there being a tiger and just that quick 1-minute interruption. And so we can use all these psychological techniques that research supports to actually be most productive when we're trying to get things done, but only after we've done the slowdown on the front end to optimize our brain for that side of what I often call killing it.
Man, you're dropping some science on me today, Joe. Like, I'm gonna have to vigilance decrement. That's never a word that I've ever even heard before, man.
I love teaching people new words and new history, because to me, I feel like there's so many, whether they're productivity experts on one side or woo-woo experts like vision boards, it never comes together. Like, these things were meant to work together. The quality of your slowing down will directly impact the quality of your ability to kill it. And so there's so many books that they teach you the productivity, but it's like you haven't taken the time to even optimize your brain so you can do the productivity, or you're on the woo-woo, like let's just relax and meditate side, which sure, we need that. But then it's like, well, now I want to actually go kill it. What do I do? And so my hope is that this book shows the whole coherent system and how when it works together, you can get more done in a shorter period of time.
So let me ruin the phrase vigilance decrement for you for all time, Joe. When you first said it, you know how my brain works. We're friends. When you first said it, I go, man, that sounds like some sort of like sexual dysfunction. Like I've got vigilance decrement. I gotta go pop a Viagra.
I have performance issues.
Vigilance decrement happens to the best of us.
You want your vigilance. Side effects may include, if you have vigilance for more than 4 hours,
call Joe Sanok.
It's called cocaine.
So, all right, no more vigilance decrement talk. I can't let you escape my grasp without discussing your like ultimate 2020 trip. Like this was one of the things that impressed the hell out of me. I love the fact that you created a podcast out of it and you brought the whole family into the thing. I enjoyed listening to it, like especially the ones where the girls were chiming in. I'm like,
Oh my
I could
gosh.
tell that you freaking loved that, and like you were just in proud Papa Bear mode. So, like, where did you get the idea to do this? Like, we're taking the kids out of school, like we're doing this 2020 road trip. Where did that come from?
Yeah, I mean, for a long time, my daughter's mom and I had talked about doing this really big road trip. And then, the pandemic hit and we decided let's do it anyway. And so we bought a camper in 2020 and in September of 2020 hit the road. And the four of us went all over the place. We went to the Badlands, Tetons, Fort Collins, then down through New Mexico, Carlsbad Caverns. We're in Arizona a ton, and then spent the winter in California. And, I mean, sure, you could put your kid in Zoom school, and there's a lot of privilege, obviously, to be able to just pull your kids and do whatever you want. It actually ended up being cheaper to live on the road than it would have been to stay, because we rented out our main house for what we were paying on the mortgage. I sold the camper about 2 weeks ago for $5 more than I bought it for.
Nice.
And
Profit.
so basically we're talking gas and we're talking site fees. Because we were doing the podcast all about it, we worked with our accountant to write most of that off. And so yeah, it was this amazing experience with my daughters, and we're able to just kind of document that journey. And now, like I was coming back, and it was, me and my two daughters were coming back. Their mom stayed in California, and we're going along the border of Arizona, and we can see Mexico. And we're talking about all sorts of important issues, like undocumented immigrants. Why would someone leave their house? Like, what's a coyote, and how do they use and abuse people on the dream of getting to America? And here's a border patrol person here right at the rest stop looking for things, and it's a complex issue. And kids getting separated at the border from their parents, and to have a 6 and a 9-year-old think through, like, how would you solve this very complex issue? This isn't like super clear as to how we would even solve this as adults. What do you think as kids? And to have 4 hours on the road pulling a camper to just talk through immigration issues. I mean, like, when they talk about undocumented immigrants or something like that in school in the future, they have a reference point. When they talk about caves, they've been to Carlsbad Caverns. When they talk about cacti, they've been to Saguaro National Park. When they talk about canyons, they've been to the Grand Canyon. When they talk about skydiving, they've been to an indoor skydiving park, or been whale watching in Monterey. So they already have this baseline of the world is magical and interesting, and diversity of people is insane. And we need to look out for people that are more oppressed or have less privilege than we have. And it's not something I have to teach them through a book. It's something that we can just discuss.
So I got to be honest with you. Like, I followed along on the journey, and I listened along, and the thing that kept on, I'm like, this sounds cool as shit. I would love to do this. And the fear that popped up into my head, where the hell is he getting his internet? How is he doing his interviews? How is he doing work?
Yeah.
What was your internet solution on this trip? I'm very curious about this.
I had 5 backup internets. So the primary one was a T-Mobile unlimited download card with a PepLink antenna, which worked 90% of the time. We'd run our Netflix off of it. I discovered that pretty much every national park, no matter what internet you have, you will not have internet. So I stopped after. I remember in the Tetons, we had the PepLink one. Then both of our phones could be hotspots. Then we had the Verizon MiFi, which is like this little phone type thing. Then the truck also had AT&T through the truck. So we had AT&T, 3 Verizon plans, and T-Mobile all as backups. Plus, if the campground had Wi-Fi as well. And for the most part, it worked really well. But I would be running just like speed tests all day long, because there were times when my daughter was doing her tutoring from Chicago, and I'm on an important podcast, and it's like it's raining outside, and so I'm like, I think the AT&T truck is going to be best. So, like, I was interviewing Pat Flynn from Spartan Passive Income, and we were on the way to what was it, Painted Desert? No, it was Death Valley, and I'm like, we're on the way. I have to do this interview. And so I literally just kept my truck running and hotspotted off of it. And the girls were in the back just being quiet. And I interviewed Pat Flynn in the front seat of my truck and just like made it happen. And it worked out great. But Yeah, that was definitely a big worry for me, for sure.
That's what I was sweating on. Honestly, I thought about it every single episode I listened to. I'm like, man, the internet thing, I'm sweating it for Joe. Like this, that's the thing. I feel like it's the year 2021. We should have something that we can all just plug into like globally. I feel like that is the thing that needs to happen like in the next 5 years. Do you
Elon's
agree with
working
that?
on it. Yeah, Elon, I forgot what he named it, but it's supposed to come out in the next, I think, 18 months. Some sort of super
Global
just
net.
leave it to Elon.
Elon. And Elon we trust. Dude, it was a really great podcast though. Like you got the girls involved, and like did they enjoy the process? It seemed like they did, or were they like, oh my God, Dad's sticking the microphone in front of my face again?
No. So Leave to Find is the name of the podcast. It was interesting to see how it shifted. Both Christina and Lakin, so Lakin's my youngest, kind of faded into the background and didn't want to talk much. And then Lucia, like to see her interviewing skills and storytelling skills just grow was insane. Because at the beginning, it was me more kind of saying, Lucia, how'd you feel about this? And then by the end, I could say, hey, we were just in Death Valley. Like, what do you remember from it? And she would just go off on this amazing story about it and how we realized that it's where Tatooine was filmed in Star Wars. And so she was like, I feel like we were like headed towards Mos Eisley. And it was just like, my kid had Star Wars references to the national parks. Like, come on.
Yeah, like I saw that evolution too, where it was kind of like curiosity at the beginning, and you were doing a lot of prompting, and then by the end of it, like, yeah, she's just rocking and rolling, doing monologues. Man, like this is cool.
Well, and just from a business standpoint, to be able to hire your kids and to give them money and then put money into just like an IRA, like, because we legitimately had money coming in and we legitimately could pay our kids for this. And so, like, you think about a 6-year-old with an IRA, just compound interest between now and 65, like that money is going to be millions of dollars if I can teach them, like, don't touch this when you turn 18, like just let it sit. Like those sort of things to set up my kids for a better future. If their retirement is pretty much taken care of because of choices I make, when they're 6 and 9, that just sets them up for a different future than a lot of us have been set up for.
100% agree with that, man. Like I think about the financial, the relationships, and the health standpoint. If we can invest in our kids for a few decades or even one decade from like their wheelhouse of they're 10 years old to they're 18 or 20 years old, like, holy cow, like I've got my 10-year-old son working out with me. I post about it on Instagram all the time and he's into it. My daughter's doing workouts. I'm like, if she exercises 3 days a week from the time she's 6 to the time she's 18, she can be able to do whatever she wants and they understand money and things like that. Like, but I just love how you're getting the girls involved. I thought that was honestly, like, you're great, Joe, but like hearing from them and just listening as like from a dad standpoint, I'm like, that is just cool as hell, man.
And to just have these little inside jokes where literally every time we'd start a podcast, it was like Lakin decide, now's the time when I'm going to eat. And she'd just be like snacking in the corner. And you just hear it's like, ah, rah, rah, rah. Lakin, you have anything to say? Nope, I'm eating. Ah, rah, rah. And just have these funny little jokes that we have with the three of us doing the podcast.
Yeah, super awesome bonding experience. All right, Joe, we got to get this book in some people's hands. We got to get it in front of their eyeballs. Right now, if people are watching this live on Facebook or on YouTube, like what do we do now? And then when does the actual book release happen? And how do we get the book in our hands? Let's dive through the entire game plan here.
Yeah, we actually have some really awesome bulk book buys for your audience where if they buy 5, 10, or 25, I have a mastermind group I'm hosting. I've got a half-day thing I'm hosting and a lot of secret things that we haven't revealed yet that are going to be bonuses for people that buy it ahead of time. Part of the game with book sales is to have as many books pre-sold as possible. And so to get on New York Times bestseller list, we're just trying to amp that up. So you can go to wherever you buy your favorite books, audio, if you buy audio, or you can buy the digital, or you can get just the regular book. If you get 5, 10, or 25, then you just submit your receipt over at thursdayisthenewfriday.com. And then HarperCollins sends us all those details and we make sure that you get all your bonuses and masterminds and all that. But it drops on October 5th. I'm going to be in New York City on Bloomberg News and some other things. The Harvard Business Club is having me come speak there. We've got LinkedIn has invited me to do a live with them. And so just some really amazing media that's picked this up. So really excited that, we can hang out and talk about the book and laugh about all sorts of things like the dysfunction of Vigilance Decrement.
Another man suffers from vigilance decrement.
Bum, bum, bum.
Well, Joe, man, I'm so proud of you. Like, I'm so honored to be associated with you and just like see you go on this journey. I know that this means so much to you because it impacted your life in such a positive way. And I'm a big fan of this entire concept. So I will sing to the rooftops on getting this book out there. You wrote the book, so I didn't have to, brother. That's good for me. That's good for me. But I want my people that are listening in or watching, like, really consider getting in front of this information, because I can't tell you the life-changing impact that shifting my schedule around has made. I feel like it's saving my life. I feel like it's saving my relationships. It's saving like me at the core of who I am. I'm not just like this mindless keyboard slave guy that creates content. I'm making an impact, but I'm also able to like really enjoy things outside of entrepreneurship. So
yeah, and we're going to be putting together kind of, people will be submitting their experiments that they try, so we can learn from each other. So over at joesanok.com is where people will be submitting their experiments, and because this is us together doing this. This isn't that I'm making the 3-day weekend be a reality. Sure, it took Henry Ford, someone that had power, to make the 40-hour work week, but we're all working towards this. I think in our generation, we're going to see the 4-day work week be the reality. And the more that we can share what works in different environments, whether it's a big business, small business, solopreneurs, over at joesanok.com, we're going to have all of those experiments that people submit and kind of what we're learning from a macro standpoint to bring it together for people to implement it even more.
Dude, I love it. I love that community aspect. joesanok.com, ladies and gentlemen. All right. We've got a lot to think about here. I know that Joe has piqued your interest, and we, of course, action step, get the book, get it on the pre-order list. If it's past October when you're listening, go get it wherever you purchase your books. It'll be there. But implementation is the key. Whether you're implementing something that we talked about here, you get the book, implementation is the key. So make sure that we are implementing correctly. And this will be a game changer, Pod Pals. I appreciate you all listening in. As always, I hope that this show continues to bring you value, and it is game-changing information every single episode like we did here with Joe. I will send you out into the world, as always, wishing you health, happiness, and many downloads. We'll see you on the next episode.